let me record it. Let me share my screen and you know what, actually, Stevie, I might make you the host because I can't actually see the participants as we're coming through. So let me see the people who are trying to join. So I'm going to make you host.
Okay.
Yes, and
I'm
then I'm just going to ask if I can share my screen, and if you can just allow screen sharing for me. Down the bottom, there's a little button that says share screen, and there should be something that says um,
allow
anyone can.
multiple Yep, got it. Okay. That.
Awesome.
Now, am I sharing or are you sharing? It looks like I'm sharing.
So I want to be sharing. I want to be sharing. So
I done.
here we go. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. All
There
right,
we go.
here we go. Let me get my little presentation going and we'll get into it. So yeah, we're talking all about training for hiking. And yeah, Steve, you can just keep an eye on the participants and just add anyone in and it should be sweet. So essentially, when we're looking at how to get fit, strong and resilient for every adventure. So to start with, a little bit of background in regards to who I am, why I'm here, why it's like, I think I'm worth listening to on this subject at least. My name is Rowan Smith, and I'm the founder of Summit Strength. And if you haven't heard of me before, basically what we do with Summit Strength is we do online personal training exclusively for hikers and mountaineers. So we don't work with anyone else. It's purely hikers and mountaineers. That is our full-time job, and that is our passion and exactly what we love doing. Now, essentially, when it comes into the hiking world, obviously there's a million types of hikers out there, a million different adventures people go on. We essentially help with three different types of hikers who kind of fall into three different categories. Number one, someone who's booked on a big trip. So a big trip could be a big thing for, might be your first major day hike, first overnight hike, first multi-day hike, maybe sort of like, a massive, massive bucket list goal or whatever it may be. But there's a big trip in mind, kind of want to get fit and ready for that. Other hikers we work with is someone who does struggle with an ache or pain. So, obviously, if you've been on the trail, you kind of know, look, foot pain, knee pain. These things hold back, a lot of people on the trail, and it's not much fun. And so we have a lot of hikers we work with trying to get on top of those things, get them feeling comfortable so they can be happy on their adventures and also open up other things they want to be doing. And also we work with a lot of hikers who may not have a big trip, may not have a particular pain or injury, but they're just a regular hiker, but they're like, look, I get a bit huffed and puffed on hills, or I'm a little bit slow, or maybe I just get a little bit unfit. And I just want to be in a better position to go out and just do what I want to do. Now, essentially for me, I've been doing this for quite a number of years now, like specifically working with hikers. And I think for me, I personally trained and prepared over 400 hikers for every type of situation imaginable. We've got a team of staff behind us now as well who has trained lots and lots of people as well. So we just got a wealth of knowledge in the world of Summit Strength. So essentially what we're talking about today in regards to this presentation is training and physical preparation for hiking. Essentially what we're going to be covering is some four particular things. Number one, why train for hiking? Because for a lot of people, they're like, it's a bit of a foreign concept. Why actually would I put time and attention into getting ready for these adventures? We're going to dive into some of the specific challenges for hiking and why it's actually, a little bit more challenging than some people may first consider. We're going to explore some of the common mistakes we often see from hikers when they often, are thinking about training for the trail. And we'll also be covering what I call my four pillars of training for hiking, which are the four things which I recommend to every hiker in one way, shape, or form to best get the most out of their time. Now, what we're not going to be covering today, to be really, really clear, is we're not going to be getting into the nitty gritty in regards to specific workouts and exercises. That's not the plan for today because it's more of an overarching view as opposed to getting the nitty gritty. As Stevie said, I'm going to be doing a number of presentations on different topics further down the line where we can get a little bit more specific on stuff like that. Today is a bit more of an overarching thing. And you're not going to come out of today with a training plan or a workout plan to follow. This is more giving you kind of the ideas around these are the different elements we want to look at. And again, the specifics, not so much about today. Now, basically, let's go on to why take your training seriously. What is the reasons we're here? And it really comes into three big reasons. Number one, stay safe. Now, basically, training, if you're doing your right physical preparation, number one, it can significantly reduce the risk of aches, pains, and injuries. So aches and pains are sort of on foot pain, knee pain, just getting a little bit sore on the other end of the day. Injuries, stepping in a hole, spraining your ankle, or having to tumble off a little ledge or something like that. Training can significantly make a big difference there. And also reduce the risk of mishaps. So trips, stumbles, falls. I'm sure anyone who's been on the trail and been on a tough hike, they've been in that situation where, we're tired, we come across a tricky bit of situation on the trail, whether it's slippery rocks, whether it's a steep descent, we've got those jelly legs going on. And it ends up being a dodgy situation. And for myself, I've been there and I've literally fell off a little cliff, in Kokoda. And when I was on there, I was really tired. I was knackered. It was the end of the day. I just wasn't thinking. I kind of fell off. I was lucky enough, nothing happened, but when we're in a better physical position, we don't get into those dodgy situations so much. Now, number two is complete your adventure. Like if you're going on a big trip, if you're booked on a tour, you're booked on a hike, obviously we want to be 100% confident we're going to get to the end regardless. A lot of people enter the adventures and they're like, oh, you know what, I'll just see how I go and I'll just sort of figure things out and hope for the best. And yeah, a lot of people do scrape themselves through, but for me personally, if you're spending all this time, money, attention, we want to make sure you're giving your best self the best chance at a chance possible. And finally, have a good time in the sense of, we don't want to get through a hike and just scraping ourselves through. We don't want to be the end of the day and just like be the absolute end of your capabilities. We're huffing and puffing, we're knackered, we're just not having a good time. Essentially, or for me at least, I want to be on the trail and I want to be able to look up from the trail, take it in, take in the views. I want to be able to sort of chat with people as I go along, just taking those relationships. For me, I like to go on the trail and just enjoy the peace, clear my head, just think through things in my life. And I can't do that when I'm knackered, but when we are in a better position, we're cruising along, we can get all those awesome benefits out of, the trail. So they're kind of the three big areas of why, we should consider training in my personal opinion. Now, one thing I want to a lot of people from the outside, and, if you're on this call today, obviously this probably doesn't apply to you, but a lot of people, when we think about training for hiking, we say that, they'll be like, hey, why bother training for hiking? It's just walking. Why bother? You just do it. It's a long walk. But obviously, when it comes down to it, hiking isn't just a walk in the park. It does come with its particular challenges. And essentially, when we're looking at our training, we kind of want to be doing our best to get ready for these challenges. So, just a few examples here: elevation, ups and downs, steep ascents, steep descents. We know they're significantly difficult. We know we get jelly legs on descents. We know going up hills, we get huffed and puffed, we get burning calves, all of this stuff. Like, they're challenges we don't really face day to day, and we want to, get ready for that. Uneven terrain, roots, mud, rocks, sand, slippery snow, ice, sleet, slate, whatever. Uneven terrain is significantly difficult, adds challenges, and something we need to be ready for. Pack carrying, whether you're carrying a full pack, if you're doing a big adventure like that, or a day pack, even that, every single extra kilo we put on our back adds significantly extra loads all through the body. And then on top of that is every sort of time we have extra load on our back and we go downhill, all those loads get magnified again. So, from the outset of we may say, hey, we can walk for 4 hours and without a pack, we're absolutely fine. All of a sudden we put a 4 kilo pack on and, that makes it a big, big, big challenge. And then obviously multiple hours, days in a row, depending on what type of adventure you're doing. The hours, just hour after hour after hour, fatigue accumulates, day after day after day, fatigue accumulates as well. Then we got weather concerns, heat, altitude, cold. All of these things affect the body in different ways, and physical preparation can sometimes be the difference with these types of things. And on top of that, often there's just no exit points. Like, we don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, we're at the gym, we're just going to stop, or we're in a marathon race, we're just going to stop and get a ride. We're in the middle of nowhere. Like, there's often very, very limited things, exit points or chances of rescue, whatever it may be. So we want to make sure we're kind of ready for all of that. Now, essentially, when we get on coming in the training context is a good training plan, and I say good, is in like a great training plan, will essentially prepare you for each of these things, prepare you for all of these things that you need to be prepared for. So the body and the mind is ready for these things, but also without turning it into a full-time job. Because we often see in the world of hiking where they're like, hey, we want to do this, 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 and this to get you ready. And then all of a sudden it's like 20, 30 hours of your week that you're supposedly going to train. And, none of us are full-time athletes. None of us have got that time. We want to make it time efficient and realistic. And essentially that's where, what we do and what we're going to explore kind of comes in. So with that being said, let's kind of cover briefly the most common mistakes hikers will often make when training for the trail, or at least in my opinion, the most common mistakes. Really, there's two kind of directions that we often see people go down with their training, which I personally consider is a bit of a mistake. Now, number one is just go out and hike. And just purely, that's all you're doing. You'll see this online all the time. Hey, how do I get fit for hiking? Someone will ask online. They'll say, just go out and hike. See it all the time. Mistake number two is just the traditional fitness approach. And I'm going to explore each of these in a little bit more detail. So essentially, mistake number one, just go out and hike. This can work for some. Like, a lot of people have succeeded on their adventures by have a big adventure and they're like, hey, I'm going to hike twice a week or every single weekend or 3 times a week, whatever it may be. I'm going to get myself fit. And this can work for some, admittedly, but it's really not super great if, number one, you live a busy life. Like, a lot of us don't have the time to go out and hike every single week or multiple times a week. It's just not realistic for a lot of people. Typically, people who recommend this, they live in the mountains, they live in the wilderness or whatever it may be. And yeah, they just don't really understand that people can't do this. Maybe you don't have easy access for trails. Maybe you live in the city. You got to drive a couple of hours to get to a trail, and it's just not realistic, again, to do it all the time. Maybe you have a recurring ache, pain, or injury. And if you have knee pain, foot pain, shin pain, back pain, shoulder pain, whatever it may be, if you're just hiking and hiking and hiking and hiking, and you're not doing anything to address those issues, they're probably not going to get better. They're probably going to either, at worst, at best, stay the same. At worst, continually get worse. And then out in season weather, obviously we're coming up to summer. A lot of people don't like hiking in summer. Depending where you are, maybe it's just not even safe to hike in summer. So that's another realistic thing. And then other situations where, like, maybe you always get huffed and puffed on hills, and no matter how much hiking you do, that's always a concern. It never changes. Maybe you're always the slowest in the group, and that's not the worst thing in the world, but some people it does mentally affect them. It makes them a little bit self-conscious. And no matter how much hiking, that always happens. Maybe you always struggle with terrain, and no matter how much hiking you do, that doesn't change. And there's certain situations where you can hike and hike and hike and hike, and for some people, these things will never change. And in these situations, they kind of want to take a slightly different approach. Now, mistake number two on the other end of things is this traditional fitness approach I was mentioning. And this is what a lot of people typically will do. And a lot of it, there's nothing wrong with this, but I would sort of say you can do better. And this may involve seeing like a local personal trainer, just doing some general sessions, join an exercise class, boot camps, following workouts you find online. Like, this type of training, again, there's nothing wrong. Like, I'm not like slagging this off and saying, hey, you're doing these things, you're wasting your time, whatever it may be. This can absolutely get you to a point. But in all honesty, when it comes down to it, there is a big, big, big difference between training for general fitness and weight loss, which in all honesty, which is, I'd say 95% in here, but 99% of the information you see online, 99% of the fitness industry is based around those two things, just generally being fit for day to day and losing weight. And there's a big difference between that and training, which is going to significantly improve your hiking. There are some similarities, but there is, major differences. And essentially, if you're going down this approach, you can come into two issues. Number one, you may be improving, you may be getting fitter, stronger, a bit happier, but maybe you're putting all this time and effort into it, and you're not quite seeing the return on investment that you could be having from that time and effort if you're taking a slightly different approach. Alternative number two, you may improve up to a point, but no matter how hard that you work, you're just working hard, working harder, working harder, you just can't seem to get any better. And maybe you've been working with a trainer for 6 months and you're still doing the same. You still feel like your strength is exactly the same. Or this is a typical one when we're talking about HIIT classes, such a popular thing. HIIT classes are amazing. In the short term, you can see such great improvements in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks. And then it starts to get really tough and you work harder and harder and harder and harder. And you just don't really seem to be moving the needle. Or at least that's a lot of situations. So this is kind of like, what a lot of people come into. So with that being said, with these two sort of areas that I've kind of like said is the mistakes, the question is now, what is the best approach for training if I want to prepare specifically for hiking? And essentially when it comes down to that, what I quite like is what I call the 4 pillars of training for hiking. And essentially 4 areas of training that I recommend to every single hiker out there, regardless of if you're training for your first day hike to if you're training to literally summit Everest, regardless if you're 20 years old, 50 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, whatever it may be. These are 4 areas of training I recommend to everyone. Now, if you follow these 4 areas, you can ensure that number one, you're covering all the bases you need in your training to kind of get ready for those bits and pieces. But also number two, as you said before, we're being time efficient. It's not going to be a full-time job. It's not going to take over your life, but we're making the best use of our time. Now, the specific makeup of these pillars, so I'm going to be talking them as generalities, the specific makeup of what actually goes into your week and the exercise and the workouts, it is going to change from person to person because we're all different. We have different needs, we're in situation, preferences, yada, yada, yada. But regardless of what your situation, I'd recommend trying to fit these things in one way or another. So essentially what these pillars are, and I'll kind of go into them a little bit more detail. Number one, strength training. Number two, hiking specific conditioning. Number 3, hiking programming. And number 4, recovery work. And I'm going to break each of these down one by one. Now, strength training. Basically, often overlooked, strength training can be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly beneficial for absolutely any hiker. Now, if applied correctly, it can significantly reduce the risk of aches, pains, and injuries. It is one of the best things you can do to reduce pain, reduce the risk of injury in so many different situations. It can make pack carrying much, much, much easier. So whether it's a day pack, whether it's a full pack or anything in between, it can make things so much easier. It can improve what's called movement efficiency. So essentially, as we get stronger, what typically happens is every single step we take uses slightly less energy. And what that means, in day-to-day life, you don't notice a massive difference on that. But when we're hiking, we're doing hundreds of steps, thousands of steps, tens of thousands of steps in a day. That tiny little change can make such a significant difference. Can make elevation easier. So a steep ascent can make that way, 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 way more comfortable, and the legs don't cook out and get quite as tight. Steep descents going down reduces those jelly legs, improves stability, makes things a bit more comfortable. Big, big, big difference. It can improve hiking speed. Like, hiking is not a race, but some people do struggle with their speed, admittedly. Some people are a bit self-conscious being with groups. Some people they're just, always on the slower end of the pack. And if you want to improve that, strength training can make a significant difference there. Now, one thing I will sort of say is times when people kind of think about strength training, first thing they kind of think about is going to the gym and like throwing weights around, the bodybuilder stuff and this and that. It doesn't have to be like that. That is a way of training, strength training. But essentially what I'm talking about here is just any way of just applying resistance to your muscles and challenging that over time. So for a lot of my hikers, they'll purely do bodyweight training, or they'll use bands, or they use their backpack. They might use dumbbells, it might be barbells, it might use machines at the gym. There's lots and lots of different ways you can go about this, but it's not so much that old school bodybuilding approach where you just go in and absolutely flog yourself and push yourself to a limit. That it's kind of, you can be a little bit more, get a little bit more out of this without quite as much work in that respect. Now, for my recommendations for hikers when it comes down to this, again, everyone's different with their week. But what I typically get my hikers doing is trying to fit in 2 strength sessions a week, which is going to cover the full body. And essentially that'll go anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on kind of how people can fit into their week. Now, obviously that's an overview and you're like, okay, cool. That looks good, but where the heck do I start with this, or whatever it may be? Obviously it can be a little bit tricky. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about at the end of the call is what everyone on this call and anyone as part of Camino Women is going to get access to. Is I've got a cool little mini course which is completely free and everyone will get access to it if you're interested. It's basically strength training for hiking mini course, which is essentially designed to take a hiker who may not have experienced so much strength training before, or specifically strength training to help with your hiking, and basically teaches you how to put together your own strength training workouts to complement your stuff on the trail. So it talks you through, gives you ideas, gives you templates, and you'll basically come out the other end and just going, okay, I know the benefits, I know how this works, and I can also put together my own workouts. So at the end of the call, I'll explain how you can get your hands on that, completely free, but hopefully that'll give you a bit of direction in regards to the strength stuff. So that's pillar number 1. Now, pillar number 2 is hiking specific conditioning. So this is basically just a fancy way of saying cardio sessions, which are going to help your hiking. And specifically, the way I define it is hiking specific conditioning are cardiovascular sessions, which you do off the trail, which you can develop certain aspects of fitness, which is going to help you on the trail. So training off the trail, which is specifically going to help with you certain situations on the trail. Now, these sessions, typically what they look like is they're pretty short. So, typically I want to get fit for hiking. A lot of people think, okay, I go walk for 90 minutes, 2 hours every single day, whatever it may be. Again, we want to be time efficient. So these sessions that I recommend here, relatively short, and anywhere from 20 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on kind of, what you can fit in. Now, typically they can be done around the local neighborhood, at home, or at the gym, whatever you prefer. So you don't have to travel for them. They can fit into your life quite well. And the main thing from this is they want to be targeted towards a specific fitness outcome relevant for hiking. So we want to think about this session, okay, I'm not just getting fit, but I'm doing this session to improve something on the trail. And as a consequence, you will improve your fitness generally. But if we can really, really hone this into towards something on the trail, makes a big difference. So to give you some context and examples of this, simple thing, pack walking. One of the simplest, most simple workouts a hiker can do, but such an effective thing. Literally throwing on a pack, walking around the local neighborhood for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then week by week, session by session, slowly building up a bit of pack weight. Regardless if you're training for a day pack hike or full pack hike, this can be such a relevant workout because it develops muscles, tendons, ligaments, strengthens those things up in a really specific way. It develops our aerobic fitness, it can increase our pack tolerance, increases the muscles in a way that'll help us with the pack in a bunch of situations. Simplest thing you can do, but really, really relevant. Another thing is stair or hill sessions. Like a lot of people, that's the first thing they kind of think of. Find a local hill, local set of stairs, go up and down a bunch of times. Very, very, very relevant. Step sessions. Maybe you don't have stairs or hills or something like that, but basically finding a short step or a bench and doing like step ups for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, do that, then rest, and then do 3 minutes, 4 minutes, rest, and do that for a number of times. Doing what we call longer interval training. So a lot of people may be familiar with interval training in the context of HIIT training. You might have done a HIIT class in the past where you do like 40 seconds of quick exercise, then 20 seconds rest, then 40 and 20 and 40 and 20. It's like really, really, really quick stuff. A way to get a little bit more out of this type of interval training in the hiking context is choosing some type of exercise, going quite quick, but it's at 3 minutes or more. So you might do 3 minutes quick and then 90 seconds rest. You might do 4 minutes quick and a minute rest or something like that. And that might be hopping on a bike, it might be hopping on a rower, it might be, if you're a runner, you can do running, though, you don't have to run. It might be, it could be literally anything, but just sort of intervals where you go quite quick, but for 3 minutes or more. Or it might be like sled pushing. This is not something a lot of people do, but like if you have a sled in the gym or you have like a lawnmower or something and just literally push it up and down for extended periods of time, really, really, really relevant for hiking. Now, again, we're not going to get into the specific breakdown of how to structure these workouts and how to plan this out because, we'll end up being here all night and I'll end up falling asleep on the call, but just to kind of get your head turning around. And if you can kind of think of these things and say, what type of cardio can I do, which is going to be quite close to what I need in my hiking, this could be really, really beneficial. Now, for my hikers, again, depending on the situation, I typically recommend fitting between 1 to 3 of these a week and between 20 to 60-minute sessions. And typically, like 3 sessions a week, it's not for many hikers. It's usually on the 1 or 2 a week, depending on, scheduling and all that. Now, the next one coming up is hiking training. And this is the one that, obviously, a lot of people are familiar with. These are the actual hikes you'll do on the trail. And because, really when it comes down to it, as much as all the other training is going to be beneficial, there is probably nothing that's really going to replicate, the uneven, the undulated, and just the unpredictable nature of the trail. It's hiking. So essentially, if possible, we kind of want to get some exposure to this. Now, obviously, when it comes down to it, everyone's different. Everyone's got different trips. Everyone's got different schedules, this and that. So sometimes just looking at a designated hiking plan that you get online or something like that, it's sometimes a little bit tricky. It just doesn't fit into your life and it just doesn't give you much flexibility, whatever it may be. So I'm going to kind of walk you through my sort of simple process to plan this out. And I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but this is what I like to do and it tends to work pretty well. So essentially my process to kind of figure this out with your hiking training and how to plan this out for your particular trip. A few things you want to do. Number one, first thing, you want to have a look at your trip itinerary and you want to figure out the longest day of hiking you're going to be doing in hours. So, maybe a case you have to do a 4-hour hike, like on the longest day, up to like a 10-hour hike. If you're doing like Kilimanjaro or something, it might be like a 15-hour hike or something crazy, or whatever it may be. But you want to figure out in hours what your longest days are intending to be. And you also want to figure out what the maximum pack weight you're going to be carrying. So if you're carrying a day pack, is it going to be 6 kilos, 7 kilos, 8 kilos? Is it going to be lighter? Are you going to do a full pack? Whatever it may be. You want to know those two kind of metrics relatively soon. Now, after that, you want to basically sit down and realistically ask yourself, between now and your trip, however long that way is, how often do you think you're going to be able to hike? Realistically, and be very, very, very realistic here. Is it a case you can hike every week? Awesome. Is it every 2 weeks? Is it every 3 weeks? Is it every 4 weeks or whatever it may be? Be brutally honest with yourself. Look at your schedule and say, how often can I hike? And pencil that down. Now, essentially from there, we want to get out your calendar. And I like to do this pen and paper, but however you want to do it, get out your calendar. Essentially, first thing you want to do now here is 2 to 3 weeks before your hike date, ideally, if this lines up, and sometimes it doesn't, but 2 to 3 weeks in the perfect world, what we want to do is pencil in a hike, which is going to be the equivalent of your longest time spent hiking plus your maximum pack weight. So if your longest day on the trail is 6 hours on your trip, and your maximum pack weight is like 6 kilos, 2 to 3 weeks before your trip, you want to pencil in a hike, which is the equivalent of that. Now, it doesn't have to be the same amount of elevation, doesn't have to be the same amount of distance. It doesn't have to be exactly replicate that hike, but these are the two metrics we kind of want to hit to give you a bit of flexibility. Now, from there, once we have that one penciled in, we essentially want to work backwards in our calendar and we'll work backwards from that date and just sort of have all the dates that we think we'll be able to hike and essentially just ensure that we're slowly working backwards and we want to do a slow and steady build up of everything. And ideally, as we're working kind of backwards here, we want to make sure that each week or each time we hike, we are either increasing time spent hiking or pack weight, but we're not doing both in the same week, ideally. So one or the other. And this will take a bit of trial and error. So pen and paper, may have to rub it out a bunch of times. You may have to figure it out. Like I've done this a million times, so I can kind of bang this out in like 10 minutes very simply. And just be like, boom, 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 boom. For you, it'll probably take a few goes and you can figure it out. But it's just trial and error to kind of see how it looks. And that's kind of the process. So to put that in sort of context, this is a bit of an example plan that I put together. Again, this isn't the only way to go about it, but this is just to kind of put that whole idea in context. In this particular example, we're going to say there's 16 weeks until I go out hiking. Now, for my longest day hiking, it's going to be 7 hours. Like that's kind of my longest day. And I know I'm going to be carrying like an 8-kilo pack. And I've realistically looked at my calendar. I'm like, look, this trip's a big deal for me. I kind of want to fit in a lot. I'm going to try to aim to hike once every 2 weeks. That's what I want to be aiming for. And essentially what I've done here is I kind of sat down and sort of put together this little plan. 16 weeks. Now, 2 weeks before I go, I've scheduled in that big hike and I put in a 7-hour hike, 8-kilo pack. Now, 2 weeks before that, I was like, okay, I needed some exposure to that 8 kilo pack. So I had that again, but I just reduced the hiking distance. And then 2 weeks before that, I did the same thing. And then 2 weeks before that, I was like, you know what, I kind of, I don't think I'll be able to carry that 8 kilo pack the whole way. So I kept the same hiking distance, but I reduced the pack weight. And then went back, reduced the hiking distance, and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. Like, again, there's lots of different ways to go about this, and it won't really make 100% sense to you until you sit down with pen and paper and do it yourself. But just to keep in mind, really, really simple is just those ideas. Know your numbers you need to hit, and then just make sure each time you go hiking, you're either increasing your time spent hiking or your pack weight. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. There will be variation. Your schedule will change, weather will change. Some days you'll carry a little bit more weight, some days not. But as a general theme, if you can have a bit of structure there, it just makes the hiking so much more effective in regards to making sure you are confident you're going to hit your numbers and be ready for the trip, but also reducing the risk of just doing too much too soon and just wearing yourself out relatively easy. And then, and then briefly, what if you can't hike regularly? What if you're the person who's like, scheduling, location, weather, you don't have any hiking buddies, whatever it may be. Realistically, you can only hike once a month or once every 6 weeks, or maybe even not at all. Like, it's not ideal, but it does happen. In this situation, we kind of want to think about, okay, how can we incorporate some type of longer cardio into your week, which will kind of get close to your hiking? What is a sort of creative way we can do to get some exposure to the body just going over and over and over and over and over and over and over for an extended period of time? Because we can't really, like, as a lot as, like, again, we're talking about that traditional fitness approach. A lot of people will sort of say, you'll talk to a trainer in the gym and they'll say 45 minutes of hard work is the equivalent of, hours and hours of running or something like that. And in some very, very particular elements, it may be, but in the hiking context, the body does need exposure to going and going and going and going, because it develops very, very certain things in the body, which just can't be replicated by shorter stuff. So essentially, we kind of want to think about how can we fill this gap. So some typical examples here. It's not like rocket science. It's probably stuff that people would think of anyway, but thinking about walking around the local area. I can't go and hike, but I can do long walks around the local area. I can hop on a treadmill, put a movie on. I can sort of have a walk. I can hop on a step machine and go for that, or whatever it may be. But essentially, whatever you choose here, you want to basically just aim to get as much time spent moving as you can. And admittedly, this stuff does get boring. It's not as exciting being on a hike and doing 6 hours on the treadmill. No one's going to do that. It's just not realistic. But just trying to get as much as you can realistically. And also just making sure you are choosing some type of cardio thing, which is not going to get you absolutely exhausted after 30 minutes. So for example, a lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to hop on like a rowing machine. Rowing is great. And they can do it for 10 minutes, but after 15, 20 minutes, they're knackered. And that may be fine for another type of workout, but for this, we need to choose something that you can kind of go and go and go and go and go. So something to think about there. And then finally, in regards to pillar number 4, recovery. So the recovery is the simple stuff. We've talked about all the hard training. This is kind of like the really, really simple stuff to just kind of help the body get a little bit more relaxed. So essentially, when it comes down to our training, the body really doesn't get fitter, stronger, or more resilient when you train, technically. We think, hey, we're in the gym, we're pushing weights, we're getting stronger, or we're going for a run or going for a walk, we're getting fitter. But technically, it doesn't really happen when we actually train. Now, the body gets fitter, stronger, more resilient when we recover from training, and that distinction is very much important. And essentially dedicating small amounts of time in your week to helping the body recover, bounce back, feel good, can go a long, long, long way to increasing your results in regards to your training, to making sure you don't burn out, to maintaining your energy, maintaining mental health, all of this stuff. It just can be so valuable. So examples here, it's basically really anything that is relaxing. It's not rocket science, but anything's relaxing, calming, could be a million things. So examples here might be stretching, just doing 10 minutes of stretching, maybe doing some foam rolling or some self-massage. It may be doing some yoga, some swimming, some pool cycling, just some gentle swimming or pool walking, some gentle cycling, whatever it may be. But any type of sort of exercise which is low intensity and you finish it feeling like, that felt good and I'm feeling pretty good. And essentially with recovery, you don't need to do huge amounts of this. I typically recommend for my hikers, just fit in one of these a week for like 10 to 20 minutes. Do it the day after you hike, or do it on the day in the week where it's like hump day, where you're like, oh, I'm always super low on energy, or whatever it may be. You can do more. You can't really do too much of this stuff, but you don't need to go overboard. So I typically recommend 10 to 20 weeks. So when it comes to putting all this all together, listening to all of this, it may seem like a lot, and you might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything now. How the heck am I going to fit all of that into my week? And listen to this type of presentation, it may seem like a lot. And obviously everyone is going to be different situations, different schedules, different needs, different preferences, all of this jazz. But ultimately, if you add all of this up that we kind of talked through today, it ends up being 2 strength sessions a week, which was anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. Ends up being 1 to 3 hiking specific conditioning sessions a week, 20 to 60 minutes. Ends up being 1 recovery session a week, which is 10 to 20 minutes, and hiking where you can. And ultimately, for most hikers I speak to when they've got a trip booked in, we can kind of find that in somewhere in a week. Now, some people may be absolutely flat chat doing 60, 80-hour weeks. Some people may have, young kids or grandkids they're going to be looking after, or looking up to parents, or whatever it may be. And you may have to get a bit creative to fit this type of stuff in. And it may be a case of, hey, instead of doing 2 30-minute strength sessions a week, I'm going to do 10 minutes every day. Or I'm going to do, there's a million and one ways you can go about it. But that's kind of like, as an overarching theme, is sort of what we're sort of looking at. And what I personally would recommend, whether you're training for a day hike, whether you're training for a massive multi-day expedition, putting this type of stuff together can go such a long way. Now, on top of all that, obviously that's training type of thing. We are training for a significantly challenging trip. There are other aspects you kind of do want to consider in your preparation, which we're not going to dive in today. But things like nutrition, hydration, self-care on the trail, like how you look after your body when you're actually on the trail, preventing specific aches and pains. If you get ankle, knee, foot, back pain, common ones, how are you going to reduce that? Pacing, how you're going to manage your pace, make sure you don't get absolutely exhausted, mental strength and mindset. There's a bunch of other things you can kind of consider, which we'll probably dive into a lot of these things in future presentations, but there are other things to just kind of put on your list and be like, do I know what I'm doing? If not, it's probably worthwhile just doing a bit of research or looking at some videos or getting some help in certain areas or whatever it may be. So with all that being said, that's a lot of information that's kind of thrown at you there. And I know, again, this can sometimes be a bit overwhelming. I know Steve is going to set this recording up for everyone afterwards, so you can kind of like check out the recordings as many times as you want to kind of digest that a little bit. But if you did need a little bit extra help kind of putting this type of stuff together, if you were looking for extra help with your training, just wanted some ideas or whatever it may be, yeah, I would ultimately love to chat with you and be able to help you out with this. Essentially, what we do in our professional sense, is what we do offer is personalized training programs for hikers to get them fit, strong, resilient for their adventures. Now, typically what our packages includes, we do a custom and personalized training program, take everything we kind of be talking about here and apply it into your situation to make sure you're ready for anything the trail may fit at you in a way that's going to be doable for your life. We also put a big emphasis into education to talk about the peripheral factors, which I mentioned before, things like nutrition, recovery, self-care, mental strength, all of that good stuff. And we also do put a big emphasis into coaching, support, and accountability to keep you on track. Because a lot of us, like we've done these programs before, we start off good, something comes up, we like pull out of it, and we're like, what's going on? So we make sure coaching and accountability is a big part of it all. Now, if this did sound like you and you were like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit extra help with this, but essentially what we're going to do is share after this call is just a little 15-minute, a little link, which basically gives you the opportunity to book a free 15-minute call with our team. And essentially we can kind of hop on that call, we can explore, if and how we may be able to help you, your situation and your trip. If it does seem like something we'd be able to help you with, and you're kind of like, yep, I would mind exploring a little bit extra help. From there, after that quick little chat, we can book in a bit of a longer call to really dive into your details, learn much more about your situation, your needs, your preferences, really get the whole picture, and then explain exactly how our approach may be able to help you. Or ultimately, if we're not a fit, if we hop on that quick call and we're like, oh, you know what, we probably don't really need to help you. Like, you don't need so much help, or maybe what we offer isn't so much in your wheelhouse. We can sort you out with some free resources to help you training either way. We have tons and tons and tons of free stuff, which we're more than happy to help you out with. And on top of that is I did mention that free strength training for hikers mini course. If you do want to get access to that, basically just book on that call, just hop on the call and just say, hey, I want to get access to that course. That's kind of all I'm interested in. Then essentially we'll set you up on the call, get you all sorted, and away we go. So Steve will share that link, or alternatively, you can just go to summitstrength.com.au/Camino Women. You can book a call straight from there. And yeah, you can have a chat from there. Fair warning, it's not me. I was planning to be taking those calls, but I realized I'm away all next week. So that will be one of my team looking after you there, but she'll know how to sort you out. So with that being said, that is that on my presentation. So hopefully that wasn't a bit of information overload. Hopefully that kind of made sense. And I know today we haven't really gone into so much specifics. And I know sometimes like can be help. Okay, Rowan, like what's the workout? Just give it that, or what are the exercises? Give it that. And today's more of a kind of like overarching thing. We will get into a bit more specifics. On top of that, like as I sort of said, we have tons and tons and tons and tons of free content. So if anyone does need anything, you can find us on Facebook, find our website, whatever it may be. We have 300 plus episodes of a podcast talking about training for hiking. We have hundreds of articles. We have tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. So with that being said, what we will do is, we'll hop into the Q&A section, and we'll bang out, I reckon, 10 minutes of this. We'll go up to 6:50, and then I'm going to go have a little bit of dinner because I can smell Ali's cooking quesadillas tonight. It's wafting in, driving me crazy. So yes, we'll do 10 minutes of that. So if anyone does have any question, open up the chat, just pop it in. We'll bang through as many as we can, and I'll just kind of do it in first come, first serve. And if anything I don't cover, as I said, I can do an email or an extra video about this another day. So first question. So from Liz, her question was, how can you get your feet used to longer walks? I've switched to barefoot shoes 2 months ago, and this seems to be helping. In the past, I've always developed sore soles after about 8 to 10 kilometers. So yeah, basically sore feet on the trail, really common. Basically, yeah, first point of call is just making sure your feet footwear is sorted, and barefoot, full boots, mid boots, whatever it may be, whatever feels more comfortable for you, go with that. Now, after that, when we're talking about the training context, there's kind of 3 sort of things that I typically recommend to go into this. Now, number 1, the simplest thing, but sometimes a lot of people really overlook it, is just a slow, steady build up in regards to your hiking distances. So really, that's the simplest thing. It's not rocket science, but basically like exposure to more and more distance in a slow and steady build will strengthen up those feet, get them a little bit more tolerant to that type of thing. And typically, if we're getting sore feet, it'll sort of happen if we're only hiking once a month or once every 8 weeks or something. That's often a common thing. Or alternatively, if we're kind of like all over the shop with our hiking, 1 week we do a really easy one, next week we do a super long one, whatever it may be, sometimes that'll be a trigger. There's lots of different things. But Liz, what I recommend is just having a look at your hiking distances, slow and steady build up. Number 2, really simple, is you can kind of go into that hiking specific conditioning and look at something like the loaded pack walking. And even if you're not planning on hiking with pack or anything like that, but once a week, go out for a walk, whack your pack on, whack those same shoes you're hiking in, and week by week, just do 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and add an extra half kilo or kilo into your pack. And essentially the idea behind that is you're basically going to get a little bit heavier than you're intending to do on the trail, so your feet get conditioned to get stronger and yada. And that can make a big difference. Takes a while, but makes a difference. And then third of all is doing strength training for hiking, just strength training. So strengthening up the calves, the shins, sometimes specific strengthening can make a difference. And then just strengthen up the legs in general. And essentially the more force your legs can absorb and the more resilient and tolerant those tissues can get, the less pressure. And essentially put those 3 things together on top of good footwear, it can often make a big difference. And again, if you need some ideas around that, literally this morning I sent through a tutorial around lower limb strengthening, which will probably to my email list and to my newsletter, which kind of goes through that type of stuff. So if you're interested in learning more, click me an email, and I'm sure Steve will share my contact and I can sort you out with that. So Trish, can you show the second last slide again, which suggests a program? Let me briefly show that. So basically what we're looking at in regards to, I think you're talking about this one here. So basically, second last slide, looking at a breakdown of the week of what we kind of talked about. 2 strength sessions a week for 30 to 60 minutes. 1 to 3 hiking specific conditioning sessions a week from 20 to 60 minutes, 1 recovery session a week from 10 to 20 minutes, and hiking where you can. Obviously, you can do way more than that if you've got the time and inclination. You can probably get away with a little bit less than that, but I feel like that's a nice median that a lot of people will typically hit. Next one. So Catherine, is a full body Pilates 45-minute session a good option for strength training? So Pilates, I love it. It's great. It's a great addition to any hiker's program. However, one thing that often people fall into is it probably doesn't really fall into the category of strength training. It can be good initially for strengthening things up. And obviously you go there, you get a good burn through the abs, your glutes work quite a bit. Depending on what session you do, there will be certain challenges. However, when we're talking about sort of strength training specifically, one of the biggest benefits of that is when we can kind of progressively load up muscles and make it harder and harder over time and every week, and making sure we're kind of attacking the body as a whole and hitting all the bits and pieces. Pilates, again, awesome, not a bad thing. I don't have a bad word to say about Pilates, but doesn't quite fall into that category. I wouldn't sort of say it's a replacement. I would sort of say it's a great complement to what we talked about today. It can be a great addition, but if you're looking at strength training, strengthening things up, getting some exposure to resistance training, will go a long way. And again, if you want to sort of like, see how that looks, get involved with that mini course and we can kind of sort you out. Sandy, thanks for sharing. Yep, my pleasure. Same thing, Cheryl, my pleasure. Can you, Kat, can you show the link again? Yeah, so if you wanted to check out that link, it is basically, again, Stevie will share this. but it is summitstrength.com.au, and don't forget the AU because there's another one over in the States, / Camino Women. And that'll just take you a page and you can check out our calendar and kind of have a book in there. So next one. What's that, sir? Oh, no. Okay. Cheryl, what socks do you recommend for long hikes? I will be 100% clear. I suck at gear questions. Like, it's not my jam. I don't love it. And this and that. So I would sort of say pass that one on to the Camino Women crew. Because there's a million and one different sock brands out there, and that's not my speciality when it comes down to it. I'm sorry to say. Or if you really want to just get a million suggestions, go onto a public hiking Facebook group, pop it up there, and you'll get way too much information and be even more confused than you need to be. But yeah, so sorry about that, show. Mish, thank you for sharing that link. That's perfect. Karen, I've always been a slow walker, enjoy my pace, but always behind. How do I get faster without losing my enjoyment of the pace? So yeah, tricky thing, really common for a lot of people. So 3 big things that'll kind of go into this. Now, number 1 is strength training. Developing extra strength, the ability of your muscles to kind of produce force will help you go a little bit quicker without really thinking about it. Really straightforward. Number 2 is just general aerobic fitness. And again, this isn't rocket science, but basically the more we can develop our aerobic fitness, meaning we sort of can go longer without getting less tired, we're going to hit less and less periods where we have to slow down, less and less periods where we go huffed and puffed, and we can kind of sustain our natural pace for longer without slowing down. And then the third thing is basically when we're looking at specific training, this kind of falls into the hiking specific conditioning. Is what I quite like to do here is something that's called tempo walking. So it's really simple. Basically, you just do this around the local neighborhood or around an oval. Ideally, you don't want to do this on the treadmill because walking on the treadmill speeds doesn't quite correlate with being out on the being natural. But basically, around the neighborhood, around the local area, basically, you're just going to set a time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever may be. For 1 minute, you're just going to walk at your normal pace. Just cruise along, just whatever pace you want. But 1 minute after that, you're going to walk at a pace that is intentionally quicker than what you're used to. And you're going to go quicker, push it, kind of like power walk, like channel, what's his name? Kel from Kath and Kim. Get that going, absolutely pump it. Then 1 minute, just casual, slow, then 1 minute of quick. And do that for the 30 minutes, the 40 minutes, the 60 minutes. Do that 1 week. Next week, do the exact same thing, but this next week, you're going to do 1 minute of slow, 2 minute of quick, and you do that same thing for the yada. Next week, 1 minute of slow, 3 minute of quick, and slowly build that up. And the idea behind that in conjunction with your strength training and just your general fitness, just getting that exposure to the quicker speeds and just getting the body a little bit more used to that can make it much more comfortable when you have to keep up with other people, and it's a little bit quicker. So the combination of those 3 things can make a big difference. Again, if you did want to reach out about that, I have a full podcast that goes into that in quite a bit more detail around increasing hiking speed. So again, feel free to flick me an email. Deb, any tips for preparing for high altitude treks? I'm going to basically say, Deb, send me an email on this one, because yes, I have a million tips on this. I've got a great podcast which kind of breaks things down, or a great video which breaks things down in a lot of detail on this. And I could talk about this for 40 minutes. There's lots of stuff you can do. Reach out to me. I'll sort you out on that. This one is more for Stevie. So does Camino Women do a fitness test on potential participants to decide whether they're suitable for their hikes?
So that's a great question. And we don't actually have a current test. I'm going with your word on it at this point, which you may have seen me come back from the Balkans, and I've implemented Rowan. We've got Rowan on board with us now. You may have got an email from me about your particular trek and the difficulty of it, and also we are putting together a self-assessment which you will have to sign in the future. Anyone coming on, and it should be done within the next, I think, 3 weeks. And you will have to sign that to make sure that you are being truthful about your fitness. But at this point, the only people that have to have a doctor's note are one with special conditions, like say a pacemaker, or over the age of 75. So yes, there is something coming in the pipeline, but it won't be, it'll just keep you on track. It's basically what we're looking at doing without excluding people. Thanks.
Too easy.
And
all right, so I'm going to get
I know you've got to get going, Rowan, soon. But I just wanted to say, those of you that just popped on, you're a little bit late. We've just done the webinar. Lots of good information, but contact me, email me, let me know that you want the replay, and I will send the link to you as soon as we get that through from Rowan. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Awesome. I'm just going to bang. I think there's just two more questions. So I'll just bang them out really, really quickly. So Louise, last one was, I'm a bit slowed downhill. I'm very scared of falling. I've noticed as I'm getting better, as I do more and getting stronger, are there any specific exercises to help with this? Yes, absolutely. You got some great exercises on that. Yeah, again, reach out, grab my email from Stevie, flick me an email. I'll send you through a tutorial which has some videos and this and that on that. And also anyone else who's interested in all of this stuff I'm mentioning, just reach out, let me know. That's easy enough. And then the final one is Louise. I find walking boots uncomfortable, prefer walking shoes. Are shoes fine for most hike, or should I try what you're used to getting wearing boots? Really, this is another question like the socks. Like there's a million ones. Opinions on this. My personal opinion is as long as your trip itinerary doesn't specifically say you have to wear boots or doesn't specifically say you have to wear shoes, you have a lot of flexibility here in regards to what you personally prefer. What I sort of say for people who are going down the shoe route is the only other thing you want to consider if you're not wearing boots is basically consider, okay, rough terrain, rough trail, potholes, roots, rocks, all of that. I'm not going to have quite as much support as a big boot. So what can I do to help make sure my ankles are going to be okay? And essentially what that looks like is just sort of some simple ankle strengthening, a little bit of strength training, kind of build that up as well. So, for people who can kind of wear shoes in most environments, as long as your ankles and your legs are strong enough, in my opinion. Again, if like Camino Women has said, hey, we want you to wear boots, or hey, we want you to wear whatever, go with what they say. But aside from that, yeah, I would sort of say like looking at the strength and stuff. And again, reach out if you do need some help with that. And cool. And I think that is all the questions. So I know a lot of those question responses, I know I just blew through them really quickly. So yeah, if you did want extra help, as I sort of said, feel free to book a call with us on that link, have a bit of a chat. We can kind of sort you out on whatever it may be. Or if you just need any of those resources I just mentioned, just flick me an email, and I'll sort you out as well. But aside from that, I think I think we covered a ton today. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure being on this evening. I really do hope everyone got a bit of value out of that. I hope it maybe opened your eyes a little bit to some potential ideas around how to get ready for this type of stuff. And potentially maybe gave you a bit of inspiration to kind of get things sorted, and get moving with your training. So Stevie, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on and have a chat. And I really appreciate it. And yeah, and I'm going to go have some quesadillas and we'll chat soon.
All right. Thanks, Rowan. And for the rest of you, yeah, we've got a big plan, like I said, over the next 12 months of multiple webinars just like this, but going into specific things like knee strength, speed, energy management, mental strength, knee issues, ankle issues, all that stuff is coming. So just make sure you keep your eyes on our emails as you always do. If you have any other questions after this, please email me and I will either get a hold of Rowan or I'll tell you what we kind of expect on the particular trail that you're going on, like the socks and the shoes and all that kind of stuff as well. Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a lovely evening, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Thank
Bye, guys.
you. Thank you.